evening, everyone. I hope I'm audible to everyone. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to be here and presenting my talk. So my topic for today is on millet as a celiac food. So the word celiac over there on the screen is coming from celiac disease. So it is an autoimmune disorder. We're going to talk about it in detail and what exactly millets have got to do with this disease. We're going to find out in our presentation. So let's have a look at different pathogenesis of wheat-related disorders. So as our topic of discussion is celiac disease, but apart from celiac disease also there are certain other wheat-related pathophysiological conditions that can occur in our body, which are in the allergen category. So the first one is of course celiac disease, which is under the autoimmune category of disorders. The second one is the allergic category, which is the allergic reactions after wheat consumption. So there can be three types of reactions which are IgE mediated because of wheat consumption. The first one is definitely food allergy. This is simply having some skin rashes or hot flushes or maybe GI tract problems that can happen after consumption of wheat and wheat-related products. The second one is the wheat-dependent exercise-induced anaphylaxis. This is basically after one has consumed wheat products. After the consumption of the wheat-based food, about 1 to 4 hours, if somebody is doing some exercise, it can trigger allergy reactions in the body, resulting in anaphylactic shock as well. And the third condition is respiratory allergy, which is basically when somebody is taking in wheat dust. This is mostly for people who are working in the bakeries or maybe in the kitchen and handling wheat, wheat powder, wheat flour. So from there, if somebody is able to sort of inspire the wheat, and it can trigger allergic reactions in the nasal passage. And the third one is the innate immunity-mediated disorders of wheat, where one can have the symptoms similar to celiac disease, but the internal manifestations for the intestinal tract changes will not happen here. So the disease is not so severe like the celiac disease, which is basically a gluten-sensitive enteropathy. But here the signs and symptoms are quite similar, but the internal changes that we're going to discuss soon will not happen here. So this is innate immunity-based disorder of wheat. Now, let's have a look at the worldwide prevalence rate of this disease that we're talking about, which is celiac disease. So why I have chosen to talk about celiac disease is because if you look at the percentile there, 76 to 100 percentile, which means, and that is given in the darkest blue shade, I can see, or you can see that India is coming in that last percentile, which means most of India is affected with celiac disease. But unfortunately, about 90% of the population is not aware that they might have, suppressed celiac disease in their body. So there is lack of awareness of this disorder, but it is very much present, as we can see. So let's have a look at where exactly celiac disease is happening here in our country. Now, since celiac disease or gluten-sensitive enteropathy is a disease which is triggered by consumption of wheat, so the northern part of the country is mostly affected because, as you can see, the wheat consumption is the highest there. The figure is mentioned there, and so the celiac disease prevalence rate in terms of percentage is 0.85%. And if you compare that with the northeastern part and the southern part, it is a little lesser. The southern part of our country is mostly into rice consumption. You can see the figure is 167.5 grams. While the northern part is just 75.1 grams. So definitely there is a large consumption of rice in the southern part of the country, as well as in the northeastern part, which is consuming a lot of rice. So since rice does not have gluten, So, the people are not consuming too much of gluten in that sense, and hence the celiac disease prevalence is also lesser in those parts of the country. So, let us have a look at what exactly is this celiac disease or gluten-sensitive enteropathy. So, this is basically a gluten-triggered T-cell mediated autoimmune enteropathy, which is totally genetic, and people who have the HLA-DQ2 and DQ8 genes in their body, they tend to have allergic reactions after wheat consumption. So basically, gluten has two parts. There is gliadin and glutenin. The gliadin part of the wheat is responsible for triggering the allergic reaction, which is the celiac disease. So what are the changes that happen in celiac disease? The histological changes that happen in the small intestinal tract. The first is the lamina propria inflammation, then there will be the damage to the intestinal lining, and of course the Millet atrophy, which is the release of the small intestine will be atrophied. We will look at the details in the next slide. So these are the different steps of how exactly the disease manifests in the body. So we see that an individual has consumed wheat. Now wheat contains gluten, which is a protein, it's a wheat protein. So the human proteases, which are the gluten or rather protein digesting enzymes in the intestinal tract, it partially digests the gluten, and in the stomach, then the partially digested gluten, sort of penetrates through the intestinal mucosal lining of the small intestine and enters into the lamina propria, which is the white section. So once it enters there, the partially digested gluten, it comes in contact with the tissue transglutaminase 2 enzyme, which is the TTG2. So this enzyme here, the TTG2, this enzyme converts the glutamine of the gluten into glutamic acid. So when the glutamine gets converted into the glutamic acid, the deaminated gluten peptides are now created, where the amine group has been removed. So the deaminated gluten peptides now bind with the HLA-DQ2 or the DQ8 genes, which are present on the surface of the antigen-presenting cells, which is APC, the green colored ones. So the binding of the deaminated gluten peptides with the HLA-DQ2 triggers the T-cell response. So the T-cell gets activated once the binding happens. So the T-cells are part of our autoimmune immune system. The T-cells now trigger the release of certain pro-inflammatory cytokines. So the pro-inflammatory cytokines are specifically the interleukin 21 and interleukin 17. You can see in the screen IL-21 there written, and also the interferon gamma. So these are pro-inflammatory cytokines responsible for creating damage to the intestinal tract. So once these are released, it sort of starts the mucosal damage. So the mucosal lining of the intestinal tract starts getting affected, and ultimately, as we can see there, the release of the small intestine gets atrophied or gets shortened, and the disease progresses. So this is how exactly, in terms of steps, I have been trying to show that how gluten consumption can trigger celiac disease, which is basically venous atrophy, in terms of internal pathological change. So these are certain slides where we can prominently see that from the third 3A to 3C onwards, the release have gradually atrophied. And finally, in the last slide, we can see that it has completely flattened. So, which means that the surface area, which is there in our small intestine for the absorption of nutrients, has reduced. So basically, release are responsible for increasing the surface area for nutrient absorption. But in this case, when the release gets atrophied and flattened, the crypts are totally gone, and the entire the framework has become like a flat line. So there are the surface area has considerably reduced, and now the nutrient absorption cannot happen properly. So this is of course the histological change that happens in the celiac disease, which basically results in certain signs and symptoms externally. So the initial symptoms will be in terms of the gastrointestinal changes, which will be like bloating, lack of appetite, sometimes diarrhea, constipation, irritable bowel syndrome, things like that. And apart from that, of course, not only the GI tract, the other parts of the body can be also affected. Like you can have skin problems, then you can have problems of the joint and the muscles, mouth ulceration, tooth decay, and in case of females, there can be even reproductive problems. And if this condition is not treated at the right time, the problem will continue to happen. It will become a chronic situation, and you can have other lifelong problems like anemia, eczema. They can be having osteoporosis, migraines, depression, things like that. So these are the external manifestations of celiac disease, and in the previous slide we've seen the internal changes that can happen. So what exactly millets have got to do with this? Why am I even talking about celiac disease here? Because for the treatment of celiac disease, one needs to completely get rid of gluten from their diet. Now, since we've seen that our country is consuming and producing so much of wheat, not only wheat, there is also consumption and production of other products like rye, oats, barley, things like that. So these all contain certain proteins. For example, like wheat contains gluten, there is oats which contain adenine, there is the rye which contains sicaline. These are all proteins. So these proteins are actually responsible for triggering reactions like celiac disease. So you have to have a diet which is devoid of all these food grains that I have just mentioned. So a gluten-free diet is the only solution for improving the conditions of celiac disease. So what one can have. So we know what not to have. So the things that we can have is the safe grain category, the ones which are gluten-free. Definitely rice. Rice is definitely gluten-free. But there is also the millet which is there. So here comes our topic for today, which is millets. So millets are of course considered to be the perfect grain for celiac disease, a safe grain which has considerably higher nutrient value compared to rice, and at the same time it is gluten-free. So perfect for people who are suffering from celiac disease. And since our country is having a lot of celiac disease people, so millets can be a great alternative for them. So this is the classification of monocots, the different the grains which can be consumed and which should be strictly avoided. The ones which are in blue, those are the safe grains, and you can see foxtail millets and pearl millets there. And of course, the barley, rye, and wheat are completely to be avoided. And oats are sometimes can trigger celiac disease, sometimes it does not. So it is not completely a safe grain. It is an in-between category kind of a grain in terms of celiac disease. Now, this is something that we have already seen in the previous...
You need to wrap up.
Yes. So, I'll just skip this. And we know that India is a leading producer of millet. And we also know about the different varieties of millet. We have discussed that in the previous slides. And a product to be gluten-free should be having gluten in less than 20 ppm. As we can see in this table, that millets have 17.1, which is less than 20 ppm. Considering that, we can see that millets are coming under the same grain category for celiac disease. This table also we have seen in the previous slides, the nutritional components of millets compared to the other crops. Here we have rice and wheat and all the other varieties of millet. These are some of the literatures on millet as a celiac food. They're having studies on millet, in different years, and everyone. I mean, we go through the different literatures here. I'm not going to go through all of them. It all speaks about highly of millet as a celiac food. So even this one, there are some studies being done all around the world. So it is a perfect food for people who are suffering from celiac disease. And these are some of the considerations to be kept in mind. mind while one is trying to prepare a gluten-free product for people who are suffering from celiac disease. The food has to be totally free from gluten. You have to look for alternate sources which have higher nutritional value, like in terms of protein, where millets are a perfect choice. Sensory characteristics of the products have to be also taken into consideration. Because gluten-free products tend to be a little rough, dry, stale, so those things will have to be taken into consideration. Then nutritional value of gluten-free products. The gluten-free products, for example, the millet-based products are nutritionally very rich, so you can prepare gluten-free products out of millets. It has to meet the RDA requirement. In terms of economics, I think having a gluten-free product can be a burden for the family because sometimes gluten-free products tend to be very expensive. And compliance with the FDA guidelines, that is saying that the product has to be having totally, it has to be free from gluten and gluten-based products, free from oats, rye, barley, etc. Now this chart is, this slide is showing you products which are perfect for celiac disease because they're made out of millet. The first one is millet-based bread, the pasta which is made out of millet. The third one are the cookies, which can be also perfect for celiac disease. These are some preparations, which is the first one to take the nutritious porridge made out of millet. The second one is the bhel puri, which is for the snack, which can be also prepared out of ragi. And you can have even a burger made out of kodo millet. Then dosa, idli can be also made out of millet, so these can be perfect snacks for people having celiac disease. You can have even laddu, salad, things like the daily dishes that we can prepare at home, and it can be perfect for a patient or an individual having celiac disease. Now, these are quickly some of the foods which are eaten all over the world. Like firstly, kuruzaki, it is a Nigerian drink. It's a fermented drink which is perfect for people who are having celiac disease. It's free from gluten. Then kibe, it is used in Lebanon and also in the UAE. So here, it's a meat-based product which can use millet as an alternative to wheat for the preparation. Even this.
Yes, we are running out of time.
Yeah, I'm wrapping up.
Conclude, please. Yes.
So these are some of the challenges of having a gluten-free diet, and these are the references that I have used for the preparation of my diet. Thank you.
Yes. Any question? Yeah, I want to ask one question. So you said about Indian populations as a suppressed gluten sensitivity, and we don't even realize that. And we are suffering and showed that world map. But the East Asian countries, even they have rice, which have glutinous rice, and they have very high intake of gluten. Still, they don't really at least manifest those symptoms that you show here.
Right.
So do you think, or rather, what is your take on why Indian population and they, on which ground we are different with respect to the
From a
countries?
genetic level, maybe.
Yeah, so I'm asking that specific question. Probably it is well studied. Could you?
So it's probably because of the presence of the gene, which is the epigenetic Q2, which is, of course, they are not manifesting, we are manifesting. That is, the different signs are getting manifested for us. But even in the Indian population, sometimes the signs and symptoms are not, people don't realize that they're having it. It's suppressed. So not necessarily that, 90%, as I said initially, that 90% of the population is suffering from celiac disease. It is just a study that has been done where people are showing sometimes, the signs and symptoms, but they're not very severe. So people continue to eat wheat because it is not, the symptoms are not very severe in that sense. So they still continue to eat. So it's not as if that, the East Asian, East Asian, as you mentioned, right? So though that part of the country is consuming glutinous rice and still not suffering, but we are consuming and we are suffering.
They are consuming for last 1,000 years or more than that. No problem.
Yes. So it's probably because of the genes which are not maybe showing or triggering the reaction. Probably that. It would be that.
Any more questions?
You showed that during the prepaid-induced inflammation, expression of like the level of some interleukins or like interferons regulated by IL-17, IL-21, TNF-alpha, and alpha-gamma. So, do you have any information about what are the genes that are upregulated or downregulated in the release of these cytokines?
Sorry, the last part of the question.
You already showed that
The interferons
interferons and interleukins are released
Yes.
during that inflammation. So, do you have any idea what are the genes that are regulated during this inflammation?
The genes that are responsible for the release.
Whenever those cytokines are released,
Yes.
I mean, generally at the same time, some genes should be upregulated at the same time, or will be downregulated. So, do you have any idea or any reports that you could say about the upregulation of inflammatory genes during that?
Not really. Not the specific.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, we have the presentation of Ms. Malati from from West Bengal State University.